listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
Welcome to the MMA Think Tank podcast. I am your host, Jay. Along with me is my co-host, Mike. Mike, we're about a week late, and that's due to conflicting schedules and an emergency that came up with my wife's family. So we couldn't get it done. We're a week late, so I apologize to the people out there. But anyway, it's been about 3 weeks now. How have you been, Mike?
Doing okay, man. Things happen in life, brother. I totally understand. And speaking of things happening, I got rain coming down, and it's messing with my Dish Network, and I'm hoping to watch the fights tonight. The World Series of Fighting 29 with Justin Gaethje and Brian Foster, so hopefully I can get that live. But yeah, other than that, things have been running fairly smoothly.
Yeah, and we've had a good 2 solid weeks of matchups and fight cards. So, and I just want to start off here with, of course, the craziest night of fights, and that, of course, was UFC 196. Mike, one thing is for sure about what happened that night, and that is that the rear naked choke showed up big time that night at 196. But let's get into the main event that I'm sure everybody has been talking about. We wanted to talk about it right away, so let's get into it. Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Super fights are great, Mike, but sometimes they could be a big gamble. And it sure was a big gamble for Conor McGregor to go up to 170, and it's one that he didn't win. So what's your thoughts on this fight?
Well, thank you, Nate Diaz, for bringing us back down to reality in weight classes and what certain fighters are going to do, because, we've all talked about, where Conor McGregor is going to go, what he can do. And even if we still think he can beat Robbie Lawler or still go up to 155 and run some wins there. Yeah. That very well may happen. But now we're back down to okay, let's just do the normal thing. And I think he will fight at 155. Because he just, after he defends the belt against Frankie Edgar, which I think he needs to.
Yeah, I think that's his next move.
Yeah, but as for the fight, I thought that Diaz could win the fight with his BJJ, with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I did not think he was going to be able to take the punishment that McGregor put on him. So when he took all that punishment in the second round, he started coming back. I said, "Oh man, I think this could be it," because McGregor was looking tired. I mean, he didn't have the cardio he would normally have, whereas Diaz is a bigger guy in general. But you know what, man? It's all Diaz, really. I mean, nobody thought he was going to win this fight. Well, not many people did, of course. And he pulled it out with his chin, with his skills. Yep. It's a beautiful fight.
Yep. And one thing has to be said for Nate Diaz. He's got a chin on him like no other. If you look at his record, Mike, the last time he's been TKO'd before. He's never been put to sleep, but he's been TKO'd, and that was against Josh Thompson. That was it.
Yeah, and that was a head kick, too.
And that was
he was never out.
No, and that was a few years ago. And we've never seen this man get knocked out. So here we have Conor McGregor. It looked to me as he came in that he was looking for that one-punch KO, swinging for the fences, swinging a lot and sometimes missing. And, after in the post-fight interview, at the post-fight press conference, it seemed that Conor even explained that he tired out. He gassed out. And it was very evident at the end of the first round that he was gassed coming into that second round, throwing punches like he was. Didn't help out. Didn't help matters at all. And, it brings him back down to earth for sure, Mike. But it's kind of sad to see that that mystique about him is gone in a way. We had that mystique about him. We all had these thoughts of, could he really do what he's saying? Could he really just fight at any weight class? That's been answered. No, he cannot. He cannot fight at any weight class and win every time. That's not to say he's not a great fighter. I see a lot of people who ran to Twitter and ran to all these social media platforms, and they talked bad about Conor McGregor. Well, I have to disagree with a lot of these people. Conor McGregor at least showed up. At least he fought. No matter what weight, he was there to fight that night.
Yeah,
And
he didn't have to fight it at
no,
170 either. He could have just said, "All right, well, we'll just postpone it." And he always fights no matter what, and that's one thing that I think you have to give this guy credit for. When I say
oh
you, I don't mean
yes,
you, Jay. I mean just people in general. And that's what he did. And look, he almost won that fight. If you look at everything that was going on, and I think he still is a threat at 155. Because he's
yeah.
so drawn out when he weighs in at 145. We'll see what happens.
But
But
let's be real though. And I'm going to ask you off the cuff here. What do you
yeah.
think what do you think he does against RDA?
I think he'll probably lose, but that's against the
I
champ.
think so too.
I mean, doing well is different than like being the champ. I mean, I think he beats some pretty good names. But I want to go back to something you said a little bit ago about how he wasn't sure about or he misjudged his gas tank or something like that. He was talking about his energy, how he was looking at his energy output and stuff like that. He misjudged that. I think that had to do with training at 150 to get a fight at 155, then going right up to 170. A lot of things happened in this fight that really, when we look at it, it brought us down to earth with Conor McGregor. But it also is not Conor McGregor's fault, because it was going to be a steady climb. It was going to be, okay, I win the belt at 145, and then now I'm going to go up to 155. Now, I've said on the podcast before that I wanted him to fight Nate Diaz as his first fight at 155.
Yeah, and I agreed with that as well. Yeah.
So it was a big jump. It was jumping 2 weight classes for him, and no one's ever going to do that again, probably. I mean, except for maybe Nate Diaz, because he's just a boss that way.
Yeah, and you're talking about energy level and what Conor was trying to talk about that night after the fight, and I understood what he was getting at, but at the same time, let's say Nate Diaz were to fight him at 155 with a full camp. Do I think he would beat Nate Diaz? I don't think so. I think Nate Diaz has the chin to withstand those punches, as he showed, because that's what it all boils down to. In the end, it boiled down to Nate Diaz had a chin like I've never seen, and and I don't want to make it sound like Nate Diaz is this crazy being that can't be knocked out. But Conor McGregor,
kind of like me with Damian Maia. He just touches you with his pinky finger and you submit.
Yeah, but Conor McGregor obviously can't knock him out. Not with those punches he was throwing, and he threw some hard left shots that connected right on the chin, even on the temple. His face was bloodied and battered, Nate Diaz's face.
Yeah.
And still he came forward. And one thing that Nate Diaz did well is that he bid his time. He just kept coming forward and countering shots perfectly, beautifully, and not over exerting himself. And that was beautiful to watch. It was classic Nate Diaz. So for Conor McGregor to go in the way he fought him, he should have known what classic Nate Diaz is going to fight like. And
let me piggyback on that real quick before I forget that. It's exactly what Nate Diaz did. Was he beat Conor at his own game? Sure, he had a really strong chin that no one ever has, that McGregor's never encountered yet. But he he submitted McGregor, but let's face it, he was taking it to him in the second round, was probably going to finish him on the feet. And then McGregor did that last-ditch takedown defense, which was just because he couldn't take anymore. And that's when the submission came. And that's what made that fight so to me, just a wonderful fight. Whether you're a fan, if you're not a fan of either of these guys, just look at it just from an athletic event, a competition. It's a beautiful fight.
Oh yeah, it was.
And that's what I liked about it. I'm not a big fan of Conor McGregor, but I wanted to see where this was going. So at the end, I wasn't like, oh, there you go, there's your comeuppance, the way a lot of people were, because I wanted to see how far he could go. And because of the weird, 170 and people pulling out, and like Rafael Dos Anjos pulling out, it was just a weird thing. But now we're back down to, look, he's going to defend the title. We don't know yet who it's going to be. If it's going to be Aldo or
Frankie.
Edgar. I want Edgar, Jay. What do you want?
I want Frankie all the way. I think he beats Aldo handily again. I think he beats him, no problem. I think even if it lasts more than 13 seconds, it's not going to get out of the first round. I think that he has Aldo's number. He can definitely knock him out. He showed that, and he connects well. One thing that Conor did show in this fight as well is that he still is very accurate with his punches. So you got accuracy, you got that timing, you got the power that Conor has. If you've got a weak chin, you're going down.
Yeah, when he's in the pocket, he was, but when he's farther away, he couldn't hit Diaz. But that's because of the length and because the difference in weight classes. Really, you're right though. When he fights, Frankie, or if he fights Aldo, these guys are more, closer in range, and
Yeah.
I see him knocking out either one of those guys. But I think Frankie deserves it. Here's the thing: Frankie has that chin as well, just like
He
Diaz
does.
does. But I don't know if he will be able to recover from the punches the way Diaz did, because when you look at the second fight with Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard, it ended up being a draw. And, so he survived those punches, but he never really came back to win the fight, just to make it even on the scorecards.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll be able to do that against McGregor.
No, I agree, and I think Frankie Edgar's got that gas tank like no other.
Yeah,
he's got a
unstoppable.
crazy gas tank for 5 rounds. I think what he'll do to Conor is he'll keep Conor on his toes about the takedowns. He's a great boxer. You can't take that away from Frankie. Frankie's a great counter striker as well. He doesn't have all the power in his hands, but hey, he has knocked some people out, so it can happen. Will it against McGregor? No, I don't think so. I think that he'll keep him on his toes, maybe put him on his back every once in a while, and maybe grind him out 5 rounds and maybe win based on decision. That could happen.
I could see that happening.
But
But kind of like with some of the other fights we've talked about, we'll probably talk about with Tate coming up, is I see one person getting the knockout or the finish, but if it goes to the cards, the other person gets it. So that's my take on that whole thing. It's going to be very interesting to see what news comes out, to see who he's fighting next.
But concerning this fight with Nate Diaz, I think that Conor just went in kind of stupid. The way he chased after Nate Diaz wasn't a smart move. He didn't throw a lot of his kicks that he normally throws. He didn't use a lot of his what Nate would like to call touch but his movements that we're used to.
When I talked after the fight, I said he wasn't moving around very much. He wasn't like going back and forth, kind of like a Dominic Cruz does. He was just staying right in front of him and trying to get into the pocket, or just whiffing on the punches.
He just wanted to finish the fight. It looked like he just wanted to finish it and get it over with right away. And, Nate's chin had other ideas that night.
Yeah, yes, indeed.
And, one thing I will say about Conor is that, at least he didn't shy away from the media. At least he faced up to it, owned up to it, talked to it.
Very professional.
Very professional. And he was very professional with Nate Diaz as well, giving great respect to him, which I love to see.
They both were too.
Oh, yeah.
Diaz could have come out way different.
Nate Diaz said, and I quote, "He hits hard for a little guy."
Yeah.
Okay. And Nate Diaz fights with some of the best guys, according to Nate Diaz. He trains with some of the best guys out there. And, some of the names that he's mentioned, they're no slouches.
Right.
But so for him to at least say that this guy punches hard means something to me. I think that's no joke. But Conor, very professional and very humbled. And we'll see where he takes this next. But, we're already talking about it. We both kind of think he's just going to go back down and defend his belt. Against who is still up in the air. We're both on the same side. We want Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
Aside from what's up?
We'll say, what about Diaz though? Where do you think Diaz goes from here?
Diaz, that's a great question. Diaz.
I don't want him to fight Robbie Lawler. A lot of people are talking about that. I mean, it'd be a great fight, but now I'm back down in the space of, do somebody deserve something?
Do I think
with the record that he has,
19
it's
and
not
10.
a great record, especially at 170, and he just beat one of the best fighters in the world, but he's a featherweight champ.
Yeah.
He's fighting at 170. So I don't want us to get so far ahead to where fights for the fans and super fights where we forget the fighters that deserve the shots.
Yeah,
so yes,
exactly.
To see Diaz fight Lawler, another Diaz fight Lawler would be a fantastic fight. There's no doubt about it. But I like to see Diaz go back down to 155 and fight some decent guys. Because look, his kryptonite is wrestling. He won't be a champ there. But he's a gritty, fun fighter to watch. I'm a fan. I know you're a fan. So let's just see him continue to fight.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to point out as well. Nate Diaz. Let's not get it clouded here. It's almost as if people jumped on Twitter to push Nate Diaz up on some pedestal as if he won the belt or something at 170. And it was crazy to me. Yes, it was a big fight for Nate Diaz in the fact that he got a lot of money. And he beat a guy that had a lot of mystique around him. And that was indeed the cash cow for the UFC. Yes, you beat him, Nate Diaz, but you're 19-10. You've lost against lesser opponents.
Yep.
And I don't think that you should be catapulted right up to the belt right away, even at 155. I don't think he should fight RDA. And I heard a lot of talk about that, people saying, oh, maybe he should just fight RDA now. No, he was not guaranteed any kind of shot like that, and he shouldn't be. He's 19-10, people. Let's keep it into perspective. I think great. That's great that you brought this up, Mike, because I almost forgot about that. That makes a lot of sense, and people need to think about this stuff. Sometimes people get along with this MMA math, and they let it run wild with them in their head, and they don't actually look at the contenders.
And it's tough, too, because, see, if we had seen Nate Diaz go on like a 5-fight win streak and this happened, I mean, that would be different.
Yeah.
But that's not what it is. I mean,
no.
In his last 6 fights, he's 3-3.
Yep.
I mean, and if I'm going to look at like maybe his 170 fights, I mean, I don't know. It's not, he lost to Don Young Kim and he lost to Rory McDonald.
Exactly.
That's at 170. Now, those are two of the best top 10, top 5 guys. But, let's just all, hold our horses.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you brought that up. But as for Conor, I don't think this really tarnishes career. I think what this does is tarnish his mystique, and I think he now is back down to realistic levels for people. Now you see him as a fighter amongst fighters instead of some sort of god that some people were putting him, to be.
I think that's going to be up to him, Jay. And because if he knocks out Frankie Edgar, he knocks out Jose Aldo, or say he knocks out Frankie Edgar, because we're going to say let's just say he's fighting Frankie Edgar. He knocks out Frankie Edgar, then he knocks out, I don't know, whoever at 155 they give him, because I don't think they'll give him a title shot right after, based off of this. It's going to be, the mystique will be, I think it will be back. Conor will still be talking probably anyway. That's part of who he is. But it'll just be one of those things where he'll say, look, what did you expect me to do? I fought at 170. I did it for you guys. I did it because I'm a fighter. Yeah. He's going to come across, we're right now in the political season of, right now. And it's going to be spun as a way, the way of saying, like, look, man, I did this for you. I didn't train for this fight and blah, 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 blah. And suddenly he's going to be back.
Yeah, I could totally see that. It'll bring some of that back, but it won't bring it all back because
I agree.
People will still say you got beat by Nate Diaz. Okay. And that's where I have to, we're coming back to that whole perspective. He's 19-10.
Yeah.
This guy wasn't, Nate Diaz, like you said, he wasn't riding on some kind of long win streak, and he hasn't performed fantastic. The last time we saw him perform fantastic was the fight before this one against Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
But before that, he lost against Rafael Dos Anjos, and, it was a decision loss, but he lost badly.
Yeah, and that's something that bothered me too. Is as much as I don't like Conor McGregor sometimes when he talks and stuff like that. It bothered me when Nate Diaz was like, they don't ever give me no push, man. Like, I'm in this fight game for 10 years and they don't push me. Well, they don't push you because you don't win all the time. And, it's like, this was his moment. This was Diaz's moment. And I'm glad he's got it because I'm actually a fan of his, because of his fighting style, because of the type of guy he is, that he will fight anytime. He will, his demeanor is great for a fighter, and I've met him a couple times in person. He's great to the fans. Him and Nick, I haven't met Nick, but it seems like they're both two different types of people. One, the fight Diaz, and then the public Diaz. And believe me, you've got to kind of fight to get into the public Diaz, because they're both very guarded, it seems. So I'm happy that he got that name win. But I don't think he's going to do much after that.
No, I don't either. Nate, I'll leave it at this. Nate Diaz, he's. I think what you were getting at earlier was that he doesn't play the game. He doesn't necessarily do what the UFC wants their fighters to do. He doesn't always, show up or show up on time like Nick Diaz. He's much like his brother. in that way for these.
Well, no, I was. Well, there's maybe some to that, but for me, it was the fact that he wasn't getting a push because he wasn't winning. He wasn't getting a win streak going. I mean, he's 19-10. That
but
tells
that's on him.
No one was behind him. You know,
that's on him. I think that I'm looking at it from the other perspective, that how the UFC views him, and I think, to be quite blunt here, I think they view the Diaz brothers as a bit of a problem sometimes. And you can hate me for saying that, folks, but I really do believe that the UFC views them as a problem at times. They start fights, they do things, some crazy shenanigans sometimes. It happens.
They're that crazy uncle or crazy cousin you have that, man, they're kind of an a-hole, but they're family.
Yep.
But if you get caught somewhere where you need somebody to help you, whether physically or whatever, they're there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how they are for the UFC. They're great for ticket sales. They're great for bringing a great fight, but they're tough to deal with.
And I say that with respect as well. I've been a big fan of Nate Diaz for a long time. I've been more of a fan of Nate Diaz than I have Nick. And that's just because I like his fight style better. I think that he's overall, I like his ground game a lot. And back in the day, he used to show that off a lot. And
with his middle fingers.
And now with his boxing, now that it's come along, I'm an even bigger fan. And I can't wait to see his next fight. And we'll see what happens with Conor next. I believe he'll fight, like we said, either Frankie or Aldo. We'll see what happens. But Mike, let's get into another fight that night. Of course, this was the co-main event, which was equally as fantastic. Probably, in my opinion, the more fantastic fight of the night. Just because I think I was more shocked and I was more, I guess I was happier for this fight.
Oh, yeah. I was very much happier.
Win. So let's talk about that. Miesha Tate versus Holly Holm. I think this is the fight that truly shocked the world. Mike, let's get into it. I mean, Holly Holm came into this fight beating the greatest, female mixed martial artist we've ever seen. Okay. Yep. And she fought somebody in Miesha Tate that's been beaten twice by this great fighter. So, of course, you're thinking MMA math. This is an easy fight for Holly, but it didn't turn out that way. What'd you think about this fight?
Well, I went in thinking that she had a chance to win this fight by taking 3 rounds out of 5 with her wrestling. And I, that didn't happen. I knew her striking had gotten better, so I was excited about that. But I didn't think that it would end the way it was. I did not think she would end up, choking out, Holly Holm, especially even in the 5th. When it came to the 2nd round, when she almost got the choke, I was like, wow, this is it. And laid on the table, I'm a huge Miesha Tate fan, always have been, and she's my favorite female fighter. Holm, I love as well. So for me, it was a win-win situation, but I wanted Tate to win so she would finally get that belt. I think she deserves it as a pioneer, as a great fighter, and things of that nature. But what a great fight it was. And really, it was the only thing that I can say for Holm is that she kept the fight at a good distance on rounds 1, 3, and 4, and really most of 5. And she shrugged off a lot of takedown defenses. And this is something I'm going to say here. I tell Jay all the time, and I tell my wife all the time, because my wife is my ear as well when I'm watching these fights. Just because you don't land 2 takedown attempts, don't give up on these things you're great at. And sure enough, that's what happened, man.
That's what happened.
5th round, she went for it, landed, got the choke. It was a beautiful thing. But that's kind of a recap, Jay. Go ahead and say what you want to say. We'll riff after that.
Well, no, that's hey, you said it perfectly. The way she won the fight, okay, was just beautiful. But I want to just back up a moment. When I saw her in the 1st round, when she came out against Holly, one thing I noticed, and it was glaring to me. And I told you this, and you said at first you really didn't notice it, but the way she was moving, the way she was bobbing her head, the way she was changing levels was uncharacteristic of her. I rewatched her fight against Jessica Ai, which was her previous fight. She did not move like she did against Holly that night. Miesha Tate came out there with a game plan, and that was to move, and move. And you know what, Nate Diaz? Sometimes touch butt works. And it worked for Miesha Tate because she didn't get KO'd that night. I thought her head movement was beautiful. She didn't get caught with any head kicks. You know, she blocked most of the kicks coming from Holly, which was beautiful. Now, she was losing the fight pretty handily when it comes to the points. Sure, Holm was scoring more with the strikes, but you know, she had a few good strikes of her own in there that she mixed it up with. Changed levels a lot that second round. You're totally 100% right. I thought that she was going to win it right there. I thought, oh, here it is. You know, she took her down. This is Misha's world. It's going to happen. I started to have flashbacks, Mike. I was thinking of Strikeforce, and I'm like, takedown is back. You know, right. Because let's face it, just for a second, I cannot stand her nickname Cupcake. I think it's just dumb. Misha, go back to Takedown Tate. It was so much better. It rolled off the tongue better, and it fit. You are Misha Takedown Tate. That's what you will always be to me.
Do you think she changed it because of the way the UFC started they were showcasing more women's fights
and glamorizing them?
What's that?
And sort of glamorizing them, like dolling them up. I think so.
She did it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think that's why she did it, because I agree. I like Takedown Tape better. So.
Yeah, and it totally would have been fitting that night. Now, in that fifth round, it was full-on desperation mode for Tate. Yep. You know, you could see it in her eyes. She wanted to take her down so bad. And when she finally did grab onto a leg, she would not let go. She moved up to the back. She brought her down. And the way she transitioned from sort of the side of Holly Holm and then just bink, got right up on her back was just a thing of
while Holly's
beauty.
Standing, by the way, in case people haven't seen the fight, I'm sure they have.
It's just a thing of beauty. If you haven't watched this fight, I implore you, go watch it. Go watch it now. Stop the podcast, go watch it now, and then finish the podcast later, because that fight is very important. It was amazing to watch. That said, I was so happy because Misha Tate won. I don't hate on Holly Holm. I think she's a fine champion. She's a great fighter, but to me, and this is just to me, people, this is not Mike, Jay says she is a boring champion. She's just too quiet, too underspoken. She is not a great champion. I know she's a good role model for people, and that's great. You want champions like that, but sell some fights, Holly. There's no way that I would pay for a pay-per-view if she was, say, headlining the fight card and the rest of the card sucked. There's no way I would buy that fight. Let's say Conor was headlining that fight card, you know, pre-Nate Diaz, at least I'll say.
Right.
And the rest of the fight card sucked. I would have bought that fight. Holly, you need to sell fights. I don't know what else to say, but Misha Tate, I think she's great. She's outspoken at times. She's a pioneer of the sport, like you said, for women's MMA, and she finally has that belt. So I was happy for her.
Yeah, and it's come together fully now. She's got a good striking game. She's got the movement. She's got the punches. She's already had the wrestling. I mean, she competed in high school with men. I mean, in wrestling.
Yep.
Her submission game has always been there. It's exciting because, you know, she's fought for so long. I keep thinking she's like mid-30s or something, when she doesn't look it, but she's only, I think, 29 or something. She's got a lot of life left in the sport. And it's all come together. And just a couple of things that, because I didn't want to go too long on just talking about what had happened, but I want to go back to that. The way Holly Holm fought that choke, I think to the end, it decided to go out. I thought kind of, you know, you can tap, don't get me wrong. It's not, I don't think you're less of a warrior if you don't tap, or if you do tap, I should say. But she just fought the whole way through, which was great. In the second round, she fought the whole way through. But all Holm had in that fight, in my opinion, was length and octagon. I'm sorry, length. I mean, like, it's just kind of like, you know, she had the reach advantage, and she had the center of the octagon. She never really hurt Misha Tate very much, and it just was, she let Misha Tate stay around to the fifth round. And Holly Holm did say she felt that she got complacent. And you know what, man? If you get complacent against a top-notch fighter, a former champ like Misha Tate was for Strikeforce, that's to your detriment. And she's only got 11 fights in the sport. Maybe she's going to learn from that. Holly Holm will.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happens next. I'd like to see Amanda Nunes fight for the belt. I think she deserves a shot based off of her win streak and the two previous champions losing. But we all know that doesn't necessarily mean Because the way I like to see it is that Nunes is the rightful number one contender. She fights for the title. Rousey gets to fight home again. Since they both lost, you get that kind of storyline fixed, and whoever then wins that fight will then fight the winner of Tate and Nunes. But Jay, I want to say something real quick that we haven't really talked about. Is do you think that Ronda Rousey beats Miesha Tate if they fight again? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, 100%. I think Miesha, even with her head movement and everything else, her boxing that's gotten better, I think Miesha is not a knockout artist, number one. So she's not going to KO Rousey. And she wins fights taking people down. That's what she does. She's take down Tate. So if she takes Ronda down, it's over. I don't think she stays on top. I don't think she has the strength to outmuscle Ronda Rousey. I think she gets beat again. And that is why I will agree with you that Nunes should fight for the belt this next time, just so at least Tate will have the belt maybe a little bit longer, possibly. Because let's face it, we're about to talk about it, but I don't think Nunes looked all that great. But we'll get into that in a little bit.
Well, but the point I was trying to make, though, is that I think
she deserves it. Yeah,
I think it's a closer fight. I think because of Rousey's her headspace is messed up, man, and she still hasn't come back yet. And what was that fight in November?
Yep.
So it's not, obviously it's only been 4 months. I'm not trying to say she's got to jump back on the horse after, she went through that crazy fight with Holm, but she still hasn't even talked about, I want to get back into it at this point or at that point.
Yeah.
And based off of her headspace and the new Miesha Tate, not just the way she's fighting, but her confidence now. Oh man, I'm looking forward to see that fight. And if I was a betting man and I had plus 400 on Miesha Tate, I would drop $100 on that.
I don't think that you never know at this point in the game with Ronda's headspace, with the way she's been acting lately. I think if she were to come back and fight 2 months from now, 3 months from now against Tate, the odds might be against her. Yeah. It really might. You never know. That fans are finicky, and especially gambling fans. There's been some weird picks out there by the gambling fans, but I'd say that she would still win. Ronda would still win.
Yeah.
Hands down, I think she would win. Against Holly Holm? No, I don't. I think she has nothing for Holly, especially because she's still with Edmund. Right. If she would have left Edmund when she lost and went to a better camp and started learning wrestling, I'd say, we have a very committed Ronda Rousey. She may come back and just whoop the snot out of Holly Holm.
Oh, out of everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at it as she's not at a super camp. She goes to Jackson Winkle, John. She goes to, name your Black Zillions or whoever you want to talk about, King's MMA. You go to one of these places, she might be unbeatable if she learns some of this stuff. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
no, I agree. I agree with that. But, I kind of want to see Miesha with the belt a little longer. So, give her Nunes. And Holly fighting Ronda is fitting at this point. You're 100% correct. They both have the losses, and they have some beef there. And there's, there's question marks there for Ronda. I'd like to see that fight. So we'll see. I don't know. You got anything else to say on this fight, or did you want to move on?
No. If it seemed like you might want to touch on the Nunes fight, let's
touch on that. Talk about that fight, Mike.
Well, it wasn't really a great fight. I mean, it was a week ago. If I can remember right, she won the first two. No, she won the first round, lost the second round, and won the third. No, Nunes won the first 2 rounds and lost the third round.
Yeah.
And she looked pretty good in those first 2 rounds. Ended up losing, but she fought a pretty good. I don't know if we want to call her a prospect, Shevchenko, but a pretty tough young lady in the ring, or in the cage, I should say. So based off of who she's fought and her streak, I think she's a rival contender. Do I think she beats Miesha Tate? I don't think so.
Yeah,
but
I don't think so
don't
either.
Give the rival contender their chance.
Yeah, I agree with that, but at the same time, Nunes really didn't impress me that night. Nunes has impressed me in the past in other fights, and that night, I don't know if the woman she was fighting was all that great, but I think that was her first outing with the UFC. Am I right?
No, it was her second. She She split decision Sarah Kaufman, I think.
Okay, but that's Sarah Kaufman. And I don't want to say Sarah Kaufman's lousy. She's a big name in the sport. She's a pioneer. But,
former Strikeforce champ, but not as big as should be right now. I know what you mean.
Yeah, but she's not really been doing all that well lately. Anyway, but yeah, Nunes didn't really impress me. I just, it wasn't a great fight for me. I really didn't like the fight that much. I think Nunes had some better days. Who knows? Could have been an off night for her, even though she won.
Yeah, and the 3 wins she has now, Shayna Baszler, TKO, and we know Shayna Baszler, she is one of those pioneers that is really done with her career or at the end. And then she beat Sarah McMahon by submission, which is, beating an Olympic silver medalist in wrestling. That's a good feather in your cap. So you got the 2 finishes there, and then unanimous decision in her last fight. But you've got the 2 fights before Shevchenko, fighters that are kind of on the downturn.
Yeah.
But there's really nobody on a run. So if they give for the title, if they give Holly Holm a direct rematch, not direct rematch, but a rematch to Tate or whatever, then I can understand that. But at least with two finishes of the 3 wins in a row, I'd like to see her fight.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, the UFC, they work at making the most profit that they can. And I think that would be for Ronda to come back and fight for the belt again and get that belt. Because I'm sure that they believe, like I do, that that's the easier fight for Ronda at this point. You come back and fight Tate. You beat her twice. Your confidence level against that opponent is at least at a high level. Whereas against Holly Holm, I think that's the smarter fight for the UFC, for their pockets. And I think that's what they usually think with. So I think they'll go with that. Nunes, like I said, maybe it was a bad night. Yeah, Mike, there was another fight on that night with a couple of OGs, Jim Miller versus Diego Sanchez.
Yes.
I hate to see these guys fight, at such an old age. I'm just kidding. They're not that old, people, but you know what?
Diego's old in the fight game, though.
They're both kind of old in the fight game. But I wasn't expecting Jim Miller to lose against Diego. But that's what happened, Mike, right?
Yeah, if I was to pick somebody to win, I probably would have picked Jim Miller because, look, we've seen Diego Sanchez in his last 4 or 5 fights, and, he doesn't look that great until the final round where he starts putting it on his opponent and almost wins those rounds. Or he does win the fight when maybe he shouldn't have won the fight based off another round. But you know what? He did. He won the fight. Looked good striking. He was the old Diego Sanchez. He took him down.
Yeah, he was.
Took Miller down the first round. Some good ground and pound. But second round, Miller came back. So I think he took his back, but looked good. And something you don't hear very often from Diego is, I had to fight conservative. And that's what he did in the third round. I remember reading an article about it because he knew he needed a win. So he didn't feel he could do the Neo Sanchez, which is, I call it a Neo Sanchez because, he usually doesn't do great in the first 2 rounds. And then he, just goes crazy in the third round. Think his fights against Gilbert Melendez and his fights against Martin Kampmann. But he didn't do that. He stayed away, threw some punches, and got out of that round 3 with the decision. Yeah. And he's on to better things now.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? Let's switch gears now, Mike. Let's go ahead and go to Bellator 151, and let's talk a little bit about Joe Warren versus Darian Caldwell. You know what, Mike? I thought this fight was a great fight for Darian Caldwell, that is.
Right.
That guy looks like a beast. The way he dismantled Joe Warren is like I've never seen Joe Warren dismantled before. I'm really high on this guy, Darian, just from this one fight. I think this guy is a good prospect, and I can't wait to see his next fight.
Well, he's fighting for the title next. I mean, as soon as he won that fight, they put it up on the screen. He's fighting the winner of Marcos Galvao and Edward Dantes, assuming they actually fight people, because it's 2 times now they've had to postpone that fight because one of them has been injured. But, I don't recall seeing Caldwell fight, and it's possibly because he wasn't on the televised card his last few fights. But, man, what he did to Joe Warren, grappling-wise, is what Pat Curran did to Joe Warren striking wise.
Oh, that suplex.
Whoop him up.
That suplex.
Like when Pat Curran whooped him up on the feet and it just looked horrible and people were saying, stop the fight, he's getting beat up too much. That's what Caldwell did basically to Warren with the suplex and just being on him the whole time. It was an ugly fight for Joe Warren.
That suplex was like the nastiest suplex I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. Okay.
Yeah, it was his head too.
It looked like something out of WWF. Yes, and I'm going old school, people. WWF. That's what it'll always be.
Yes.
Anyway, that suplex was crazy. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's crazy. Darian Caldwell is a beast to be reckoned with.
And it's something I wrote on the Facebook page too, which was that as soon as he did the suplex, you could tell in Joe Warren's fight. I'm sorry, in Joe Warren's face, the fight was gone from him. Mm-hmm. He was just gonna try and survive. Yep. And man, Caldwell, like you said, he's a beast. He's gonna be a great guy to watch. And it's funny how Bellator does that because they don't have a lot of guys in the divisions, to showcase all the time. And Caldwell, this might have been the first fight everybody sees because I don't recall him fighting. And man, that undefeated record at 8-0 coming in, I believe. Now he's 9-0. That's to me, that's now legit because even if Joe Warren is kind of near the end of his career, he'd still just beat LC Davis, who's a great veteran. And so to get destroyed by Caldwell, man, let's see him fight Dantes or Gaval. Yeah,
when you speak of somebody getting destroyed, you never usually end that sentence with Joe Warren. Joe Warren usually never gets destroyed. Nothing ever close to this. And if you guys haven't watched it, go watch it. What else did we have on that fight card, Mike?
The fight I was even more excited about was the Bubba Jenkins and Goiti Yamauchi fight. Yes. And there wasn't a specific title shot on the line, but those two guys went out in a really a prospect up-and-comer matchup. Bubba Jenkins wrestling against Yamauchi's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, Bubba came out ahead with the wrestling aspect. And what did you think about that, Jay?
It was a great fight. I thought it was good back and forth. I thought that Yamauchi had Bubba in several submission holds.
Some triangles and stuff.
Yeah, attempting to submit Bubba. Bubba was having none of it. Bubba is the type of guy that muscles through all that stuff, and he definitely did that night. He just had the power. He had more strength than Yamauchi. It was obvious. And he just muscled through some of that stuff and, won the fight based on just being overpowering.
Yeah, just getting the takedown, staying on top. He landed some good shots too, but like you said, Yamauchi had some really good stuff on his back. I think when we talked after the fight, Jay, I think you said something like you're a fan of both the guys.
Oh, yeah. I'm impressed with Yamauchi. Even though he lost, I'm very impressed with his game. I love a good ground game. That's what I love.
If you guys listen to the last podcast, you'll hear how excited I was about both these guys. And Jay, I'm pretty sure I got you excited about it.
Yes, you did.
And it came true.
Yep. And Bubba Jenkins just proved that hey, he can beat a good ground game specialist, and he did. And it was fun to watch. Another fight that you should watch if you haven't. So. All these fights are on Bellator's website, by the way. They come out, boom, just watch them on the website. Yep. And, that's basically all I wanted to touch on due to time constraints and stuff with Bellator 151. And, again, we'll switch gears and we'll touch on a couple of fights from UFC Fight Night 84. That, of course, was Anderson Silva versus Michael the Count Bisping. Mike, when we talked about this fight, I think we both definitely said that Anderson Silva was going to win this fight, didn't we?
Yeah, but there's something else we said that came to fruition as well.
Okay.
Which was if it was to go 5 rounds, it was probably going to go to Michael the Count Bisping.
Yes. But Michael the Count Bisping, okay, and I want to put it to rest, people, because I remember watching this fight, and then after the fight, going to Twitter, and you can follow us on Twitter, by the way, at MMA Think Tank PC. That's MMA Think Tank, P as in Paul, and C as in cat.
Or P as in pod and C as in cast.
There you go. It stands for podcast, not politically correct, which some people have asked me. Anyway, with this fight, Mike, I just want to put it to rest. People, Bisping won this fight. Based on points, He won this fight hands down. You got to take a look at that 4th round, people.
There's no argument.
Take a look at that 4th round. He won this fight hands down. For people to call it a robbery, it's ridiculous. Look, Anderson Silva is on the tail end of his career, at the very tail end, and he's losing fights left and right. I mean, yeah, he had that one no contest in there, but guess what? Cheaters, that's what happens.
If you're gonna be mad at somebody, be mad at Anderson Silva if you're angry about this
Exactly.
fight, because there's so many times he really could have put it on Michael Bisping and he didn't.
Uh-huh.
And he stayed back on the cage, looking around, fooling around, and he could have finished Michael Bisping a couple of times, especially after that one kick at the 5th round. But he didn't do that. So I'm not gonna. So if they fought again and maybe Silva fought differently, yeah, maybe he does win that fight. But Bisping, man, I've been a fan of him for a while, ever since Tough 3, and he finally got that big name win, whether people think he deserved it or not. And he did his game. He did the tight striking, the technical striking. I talked about, and he kept being on Anderson Silva, and that's always the key we talked about. For me, at least, I talked about how as long as he keeps the striking going and pressures him, he'll do fine. Maybe he won't win, but he'll do fine.
Yeah.
And the only time he didn't pressure him was when Anderson Silva sat up against the cage and started moving hand movements and being weird.
Yeah, you know what, and that's another thing. Thank you for bringing that point up. You can't win a fight by doing jazz hands, okay?
Yes.
Maybe you would win a dance recital, but the jazz hands has to stop. The game playing has to stop, Anderson. There was plenty of times during that fight I thought you could have pulled the trigger, Anderson, and you didn't, and that's why you lost this fight. Too much jazz hands, not enough fighting. I'm tired of seeing that. I don't know if that comes from your one of your mentors there, that martial artist Steven Seagal. Yeah, I don't know if that comes from him, but you know what? You need to drop him if it does, because that's just not working out for you. Jazz
Seagal
hands
does
needs
do
to
that
stop.
thing where he does the hands, and then
Yes,
you're right,
yes.
when you watch his movies and stuff.
It was just irritating to watch him fight. And that's what it's getting to now. Every time I watch an Anderson Silva fight now, I get irritated because he is such a great fighter. He has so many weapons in his arsenal, and he does not pull the trigger. He sits there and he toys with guys, and this is what happens.
And Jay, you talked about how you wouldn't want to buy a main event, or I'm sorry, not a main event, a pay-per-view with Holly Holm. That's how I feel about Anderson Silva now.
Yeah, I do too.
And something that I forgot, because it's been a week ago, is we definitely need to talk about that round 3 with Bisping's mouthpiece coming out. And him almost getting knocked out at the end of the 3rd. I didn't think he was knocked out. I thought for sure they just stopped it for the round. I know he was hurt bad.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, people. But that whole thing of Silva celebrating and then having to get pulled down, it was a whole just crazy, weird thing that happened. And I don't know if that messed with Silva's head or not. But what a warrior, I know. People always say warrior. I gotta say something different than warrior all the time. But what a great fighter, and just what a great heart Bisping had after that to come back and fight 2 more rounds.
Well, let me touch on that too. When he went down, I believe it was a flash KO. But whether or not you believe it was a flash KO, that's up to you guys. But that's not it's up to the ref in the cage.
That's Herb Dean's call. Yep.
Herb Dean did not call the fight. Herb Dean never stepped in and stopped the fight. He stepped in to watch it closely at that point, because at that point, he might have stopped the fight, if he got tagged a couple of more times. But what Anderson Silva did, run away, jump on the fence, play these silly games, which I'm telling you, he plays too many games. All he did was cause Bisping to recover.
Yeah.
He gave Bisping time. So if you're going to be mad at anybody, be mad at Anderson Silva, folks. Mike is 100% correct. The guy played too many games that night and didn't pull the trigger. It's his fault he lost, and it's rightfully Bisping's win. I was happy to see Bisping win that fight, and I'm not a big Bisping fan, so I'm getting to the point where I don't like watching Anderson Silva fight.
Well, he's trying to get on the 198 card because it's all in Brazil, and Musasi would like to fight him either 199 or 200, which would be fantastic. And we can, if you want to, we can just move into that fight from that night, unless you want to say something else about that fight, Jay.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead and talk about it. Gegard Mousasi. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, Musasi, was fighting Talis Latis. Really, it was one of those fights that these guys are still trying to find their way. They're still at the lower end of the top 10, and this is really one of those fights where whoever wins this fight is kind of going to show you that they're still in it to move up the ladder, and the other guy might need to take some time to get his footing, to get back on that ladder. And Musasi showed that with his experience, with his more well-rounded game, that he was able to unanimously, not just unanimously decision Talis Latis, just destroyed him without hurting him too much. I mean, look, what I mean by that is that, yes, Latis was hurt, but it was more that the control that Musasi put on him took him down, was on top the whole time, almost got in submissions. And this is a guy, Talis Latis, who is one of the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts in the game. So for Musasi to control him the way he did for all 3 rounds just proved that Musasi is still ready to move up.
Yeah. And let's not forget the guy we just spoke about, Michael Bisping, gave Latis his last loss before Gegard Mousasi beat him at UFC Fight Night back in July. And, Gegard, like you said, he's coming into this fight. He needs this win. He didn't look good against Uriah Hall. And I thought we saw the old Gegard that night. I saw glimpses of the old Gegard, and it was good to see because he's a much better fighter than he showed us against Uriah Hall. So
remember he took the first round of Uriah Hall's fight quite handily. I mean, he did get knocked out by Uriah, but that leads me to what I was going to say is that Musasi talked about the reason, that everybody was booing him, and he was flipping off the crowd, and something that's very uncharacteristic of Musasi. But like Diego Sanchez, he said, "Look, I've got to get a win. Well, I can't do something stupid to get caught, like when I got caught against Uriah Hall."
Yeah, and not just Uriah Hall though. If you go back when he fought Costas Philippou back last year, I think it was in May, he looked terrible. And he got the decision win, but he didn't look great. He didn't look himself. So that's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, he hasn't looked great in the UFC at all.
I'm glad to see Gegard, looking like he did in Strikeforce. And he fought some great competition in Strikeforce.
Yeah.
So
was the champ for a second too.
Yeah, and so I you know what? It's good to see him coming around in the UFC. All right, Mike. Let's get into some news. It's been a few weeks now, so
News Corner.
Go ahead and tell us what's been going on in the world of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, some of these things we'll talk about at length. Some of these things we'll talk about really just for a minute. But the first one we've got is Fabricio Verdum is fighting Stipe Miocic at UFC 198 in Brazil in a soccer stadium. It's a really good, going to be a really big show. That's also the show that has, I think, Jacare fighting Vitor Belfort. A lot, of course. But so Miocic definitely has the title shot now against Verdum. We're not going to have any more of that Cain Velasquez nonsense where he gets to just fight, rematches anytime I shouldn't say anytime he wants, but anytime the UFC just asks him to. Yeah. So I'm excited for that fight.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Miocic fight. I like I've said in the podcast before, the stinky division aside, I think Miocic is a great fighter, and I think that he's a good younger guy coming up in this division. One of the very few. So it's going to be exciting.
I think Miocic is probably going to lose to Verdum. Verdum has just been fantastic lately, but you just never know. But if Miocic does win this fight, I think he's a better face for the UFC than Verdum is because he's a great knockout striker. Oh, come on
now. That troll face is the perfect face for the UFC and that division.
Even if anybody has seen it's not the Go Big, that was the previous one. Oh, UFC Unstoppable press conference when they're talking to everybody and everything, and then they all come out and do their face off. He does the troll face, which is just fantastic. Yeah. Miocic was not having it, but yeah, I'd like to see Miocic win that fight. But we'll see what happens. Look, the injury bug doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Verdum. I think he's a great fighter all the way around. It's just the division lacks so much, and it's good to see a younger guy like Miocic come up and be a good contender. So I'm kind of pulling for Miocic, to be honest, but I like Verdum. So whoever wins here, it's a win-win for me.
Yeah, especially if Miocic knocks him out, then I think you've got a really good. Not that Verdum isn't a good face right now, But I think a lot of people just see him in the last fight with Kane, and then people just say, "Oh, well, if Kane would have fought at the sea level," and all those weird things. But moving on, Jade, one of your favorite fighters, and one of the fighters I respect a lot as well. Will Brooks is a free agent in July or in 2 more fights. So pretty much he has not been talked to about a fight in the last few months. So I think they're going to have him ride out his contract through July, and he's going to be a free agent. And I'm a religious man. I'm a Christian, and let me just say that I am praying that he signs with the UFC.
Yes, come to the UFC, Brooks. Please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jay and I, we talk about, as I'm sure a lot of you guys talk about out there, what guys from from Bellator or the World Series of Fighting, or maybe even a guy that's really looking so great right now in a regional promotion would do well in the UFC. Mm-hmm. I think this is one of those guys.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what, guys? Write to us. Let us know who you think should be in the UFC fighting the best of the best.
Yeah.
MMA Think Tank at gmail.com. We're there. Come to the Facebook page, the fan page. Yes, I'm giving the plugs now. I know I usually do at the end, but Mike, you deserve it, man. Mike is writing excellent articles up on Facebook all the time.
Thank you,
brother. He's being featured on other sports websites now. It's awesome. Mike is doing his thing, and you guys need to come and check it out. So go ahead, Mike. What else you got?
Well, we've got Bellator 152, which is going to be on April 16th. That is now going to be headlined by Patricky Pitbull Ferrer, fighting Derek Campos. You guys might remember Derek Campos was the guy that just knocked out Melvin Gillard in the last, in Bellator 149, which was a horrible card. But Campos looked fantastic, so he's going to be the main event. The co-main event is still going to be Brian Rogers versus UFC vet Alessio Sakara. That's the Italian card. So, got anything to say about that, Jay, before we move on? Or?
I loved Mario Brothers back in the day. I'm sorry. I got nothing to say about the Italian card.
Now when Alessio Sakara walks out to the cage, I'm just going to be like, dun, dun, dun,
yeah,
dun,
there you
dun,
go.
Dun, 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 dun.
If he comes out with a plunger on his back in overalls, it would be perfect. And a fake mustache. I'd love it.
It does tell you something about how Bellator sees Patricky Pitbull and this Derek Campos matchup to put them as the main event over Brian Rogers, who's looked pretty good and won his last fight. And, of course, they're in Italy. They have an Italian-born Alessio Sakara. You'd think they might leave him to the end. But Campos and Patricky Ferrer, Pitbull, they need some wins. They need to get back on a run. So yeah. I think it's going to be great. Speaking of Bellator, we've got actually a few more things on Bellator. Just a quick shot. Bellator 155 will be on May 20th. And we've got Pat Curran in the co-main event fighting Georgi Karhanen.
That's a tough name. That's a tough name to say, Mike.
Yeah, even if you spell it out, it's still kind of tough. But that'll be a great fight at featherweight. But the main event is Melvin Manhoff and Rafael Carvalho for the 185 title, for the middleweight title. Remember, Carvalho just won the title, so it'll be his first defense. And both these guys are strikers.
And Manhoff is a beast.
Yeah, he's been fighting forever, Jay. But
yes,
now
he has.
He's coming to his own, right?
Yeah,
he might get that belt after all this time.
Who knows? But Carvalho ain't no slouch. But Carvalho is going to be there to defend that belt to the death. To the death.
What's great is all this stuff is free, man. It's all on free TV. And then 153, Bellator 153, the Koreshkov Benson Henderson card.
Yeah.
That's going to be, they're going to have Brennan Ward versus Evangelista Cyborg Santos, the male cyborg, and Patricio Pitbull Ferrer now, Patricky's brother, the great featherweight versus John Teixeira. That's happening on April 22nd. Jay, what do you think of those?
Is John any relation to Glover?
You know what? I didn't see that.
No.
I'd like to think so, though.
Okay. Yeah, they're all related, right?
Everybody's related. All the Smiths, they're all related. The Teixeiras, they're all related.
And one question about Santos, Evangelista Santos. Okay. Is this, I know he was called Cyborg. Is he still called Cyborg?
You know, he still has the moniker, but he kind of goes by, I think, Evangelista now.
Yeah, because I think he probably gave that up to his ex.
Yeah, because she's more, whether you think she's a cheater or not, she's got the winning streak going. She's the star. And this Cyborg has been kind of hit and miss.
And let's be honest, she'll kick his butt, right, if he tries to take it.
Yeah. I've seen them together and how big she is compared to him, and it's just amazing.
Those are great fights, though. Well, I think it's a win for Brennan. That's me personally. I don't think Evangelista Santos has been a fantastic fighter all his career. So I think Brennan's going to win that one. But
I think it's a showcase fight for Brennan. But not against a nobody, but just against a veteran that people can say, well, look, he hasn't been fighting no names. He beat this guy. So
I could totally see that. But I'm interested in seeing who this John Teixeira is, because if he's any relation to Glover, who knows? He may have some serious hands.
Well, I don't have the stats in front of me, but when I looked him up, because I didn't know him either, I think he's close to unbeaten, and he's been finishing guys. So he's one of those guys that is for sure going to be just a great matchup with whoever he fights.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Couple more things with Bellator, but we'll just do one for right now because there's some other stuff coming up with the UFC, and that is Vanderlei Silva signs with Bellator. I'm excited about that personally. I know that Vanderlei Silva is at the end of his career and probably should be fighting anymore. He's not going to do much, I don't think. But who?
I said nope. I'm just saying. I'm agreeing. Nope.
Yeah, but at the division for 185 or at 205 in Bellator, maybe he can get some stuff done. He'll have some good fight names to fight. So I'm willing to watch it as long as he's not getting destroyed.
Yeah, I'm just worried about his chin. Man, that chin has been worked. Vanderlei, I don't know about these old guys coming back. And when I say old guys, I don't necessarily mean age. I mean guys that have just been fighting in the game for so long. And 10 fights ago, you're like, they're at their tail end of their career and they're still fighting, And he retires, comes back. Sorry. It's crazy. So
to give you an idea of how long Vanderlei has actually been fighting, a lot of people don't know that he actually fought Tito Ortiz in the UFC, but that was back like at UFC, I don't know, 17, 18, something like that. He's been around for a while. He and it kind of goes hand in hand. He and Vitor Belfort, they actually fought each other. That's the one of the biggest highlights of Vitor's career is that punching him back to the fence. A lot of people have seen that. Vanderlei's been fighting forever. So we will see what happens with that. Jay, any more anything to do, discussion on anything like that, or should I move on to UFC stuff?
Go on to the UFC.
Now, this is where really we talked about some fun fights, some fights where people were growing in Bellator.
I got stuff to say about this next one.
Yeah. So we've got this is the nitty gritty stuff. Rory McDonald versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at Fight Night 89 on June 18th. What a fantastic fight that's going to be.
Well, I'm upset at this fight. I think he should be fighting for the title already. I think the way he dismantled Johnny Hendricks in one round, people, round. Number 2 guy destroyed him. And let's not forget, he's on a 6-fight win streak. Mm-hmm. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson should be fighting for that belt now.
He hasn't lost since the Matt Brown fight.
And mark my words, if he were to fight Robbie Lawler right now, he would beat Robbie Lawler, folks. I don't care what you think about Robbie Lawler. Okay, I'm looking at it with my naked eye, and I see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson being the better of the 2 fighters. I do.
I agree. I mean, his movement is so much better. His striking is pinpoint. I mean, he always had the great striking, but now it's just on another level.
Yep.
It's just I'm excited for it.
But here's my dilemma with this fight. Here's my issue with this fight, I should say. You're putting him up against a guy who's a very well-rounded fighter in McDonald. Rory, with his fight style and his counter-striking style, has a very good chance of beating Wonderboy. I think Wonderboy might beat him, but you still have that chance where he might beat him. And then what do we have next? We have another rematch between McDonald and Lawler. I don't want to see that again. I know people loved that first fight, but I think in the end, it's going to go back to Lawler.
Well, right now they're looking at that Tyron Woodley trying to fight Robbie Lawler, and we'll see how that goes. But I do agree with you, because if they fought twice, they both had pretty good fights. Well, I guess their first fight wasn't great; it was kind of boring, but went to decision. But of course, the second fight made up for it.
Yeah.
With Lawler's knockout of Rory McDonald.
Yep.
In their second fight, when Rory McDonald, could have finished it in the third, but if it was not for the bell. So yeah, maybe we'd like to see them fight in general, but it's just nobody wants to see that right now. Much like Johnny Hendricks with his third fight with Robbie Lawler. I thought that he deserved it, but nobody wanted to see it, and so they didn't give it to him. Something I found interesting when I was reading the last couple of days, though, was that he wanted to fight for the title, of course. Wonder Boy did. Not very happy that he's fighting brother Rory McDonald. So I didn't know they trained together, and I guess he's up at TriStar now.
Okay.
Wonder Boy is. I guess I forgot about that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember him being at TriStar. But yeah, I didn't put two and two together either. So that's interesting. But at the same time, you said it all. We all look at these fights and we're like, rematch. And I think people get tired of rematches. Regardless of how great the fights were, I think people tend to just wane on that. They want to see something fresh, something new. And Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is that fresh and new, though his fight style is so unlike Robbie Lawler that I think he would destroy him.
Well, it's like Dominic Cruz fighting a lot of guys, right? The movement and how he makes these guys, these orthodox guys, look bad. I think that's what he would be able to do. And the UFC, I think, has to strike while the iron's hot, man. I mean, like let's say Rory does beat, like you said, what if he does beat Wonder Boy? Then you had this fight that everybody saw free on Fox Sports 1, and now you have him back down and maybe got a top 5 matchup. When I think they should just go ahead and give him that fight. I agree with you, but man, so much stuff is in the air. Is Diaz going to fight Lawler?
Yeah.
Lawler is man. Everybody wants to fight Lawler.
We'll see what happens, but I just look at Stephen Wonderboy Thompson as like a younger, stronger version of Carlos Condit.
Yeah,
he reminds me of that type of fighter. Just puts it all out there, and
yeah, striking wise, I totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that I'll be blunt. I think Condit won that fight against Lawler, so I think it's a no-brainer to think that Stephen would win this fight against Lawler.
Yeah, I thought he won, and my wallet thinks that he won, but he did not on the scorecards.
Yep.
Speaking of rematches that are warranted and not are unwarranted, at UFC 199, get your money out, get your wallet out, and pay for this one, people. June 4th, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman 2, and Dominic Cruz, Uriah Faber 3. Now, we've talked about Rockhold, Weidman 2 before because this is not a new release of a fight, but they didn't know where it was going to be. Well, now we know it's on 199. Now, Cruz Faber 3 is a new release. That was newly released at the UFC Unstoppable press conference. And this is a fight I've been wanting to see for a while, Cruz Faber. I think Cruz is still going to win this fight unless Faber can hit him hard and choke him out. I'm glad to finally see this trilogy finished. They're both 1-1. But it's going to be at 199, both those fights, co-main and main event. Great card. Jay, what are your thoughts?
Great card, but what are they going to do for 200? All these great fights are out of the way, and there's nothing there for 200.
I will tell you this, as I'm always trying to write and stuff, I've got something I can talk about later on if you like, and we can discuss some of those things that I have that could happen.
Well, we could touch on that, but yeah, go ahead and touch on it now because I don't have much to say about Rockhold versus Weidman. I think Rockhold is going to do his thing again. I think if they come back both fresh and healthy this time, and they both don't have foot injuries, which apparently they both had, I still think Rockhold should win this fight anyway.
I'm certainly leaning to how you think right there. I'm a big Weidman guy. We'll see what happens. Do you want to touch on Faber?
Cruz Faber
before I go to 200?
Yeah, Cruz Faber. It's kind of like too little, too late. I don't know. For me, it's like they're at the end of their career. I know we say that a lot, but Faber definitely has lost a step. And Cruz, I mean, you could say he's lost a step too. I would say Cruz is going to win this fight. I would love to see Faber take Cruz down and choke him out. I would love nothing more than to see that. But
this has got to be his last fight, right? This has got to be his retire. Win or lose, he's got to retire.
Who?
Faber.
You think he's going to retire? I don't know.
I think so.
Faber's one of those guys that keeps going, but who knows? He's got his gym. He makes money. He's got a lot of endorsements where, he's got a lot of things on. He's got his clothing line. He's got a lot of things that he's got paying his
He's
bills.
got a lot of things on the wall, literally. He has a list on his wall of stuff that he's looking into doing. Or doing currently.
He's a very smart guy and very marketable as well. So, yeah, he could do other things. So maybe you might be right. Win or lose, he might retire. But if he wins, what a retirement that would be for him. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, just before we move on, then I'll just to touch on the things I just kind of have listed. And this was something that I wrote 6 days ago, this list. So some of it actually has come to fruition, not because I'm some Svengali or wizard or anything. It's just some of these things make sense. Anderson Silva versus Musasi at UFC 200. We talked about that. I think I'd like to see that fight. McGregor versus Edgar. That's kind of a duh. Of course, we'd like to see that. Tate versus Nunez. We talked about that today. And I have Holly Holm versus Juliana Pena. And Jay, I have that because, we don't know where Ronda Rousey is. She said she's not going to fight at 200.
She's not fighting right now.
She's not going to fight at 200. So if she's not going to fight at 200, Juliana Pena versus Holm would be great, I think. 4 other fights, and then we can discuss it if you like. Dos Anjos versus Alvarez. Cerrone versus Hendricks was kind of my wild card. Aldo versus Holloway. And Van Zant versus Watterson.
But as big and as good as those fights are, it still doesn't jump out at you like you would expect the UFC 200 fight card to jump out at you, like it did for 100.
Yeah, 100 was Mir and Lesnar. GSP versus Alves, and then the middle fight was Henderson and Bisping. Yeah.
Well, that card jumped out at you back then. I mean, these were all huge names. It's like some people that just got into this game are like, Lesnar, who? Who's Lesnar?
Exactly.
But no, Brock Lesnar was a force to be reckoned with back in the day.
Especially then.
Oh, man. Yeah, especially then.
Look up beatdown in the dictionary, and you'll see Frank Mir's face from that fight.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, those are all some good fights that you bring up. They're decent, but will they happen? I don't know. Some of those sound kind of far-fetched. I don't see Juliana Pena fighting Holly Holm. I don't think that'll happen by then. I think Holly Holm might take a break until she can fight for the belt again or something. I think that's what'll end up happening.
But that's really, this is all I really have, man. It's like you said, and I agree. What happens at 200? That's what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
This is the best I got, man. But moving on, something that's it's not really mixed martial arts news, but kind of is, I guess. Paige Van Zant's going to be on Dancing with the Stars. First we're going to have Chael Sonnen on The Apprentice, and now we have Paige Van Zant on Dancing with the Stars.
Woo!
Yeah, and I'm happy to watch that.
You know what? I think I might have to watch Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
Don't tell anybody.
I watched, I think Chuck Liddell, I'm pretty sure he was on that one, and I started just fast forwarding to his fight, not his fight, but his dance to see what was going on. And I got kind of bored with it because it's not really my thing. We all have our things, and this is not my thing. But I think Van Zant.
Yeah, I think Paige might be your thing. I don't know.
Well, no, it's not just because she's a beautiful young lady. It's also because she does know how to dance, right? You've sent me videos, and videos are out there of her. She's a fantastic dancer, so she's a chance to win the whole thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, a news I wanted to touch on is, did you see that John Anik lost a bet and now he has a tattoo, Mike?
Yes, he does.
I guess he has the area code for Stockton, California. 209 is now on his calf. And it's a big tattoo, people. It's a big tattoo. 209 written right out on his calf.
John Anik is a good dude, man. I'm glad he went through with that.
Man of his word.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's probably going to take it off probably like in a couple of weeks or something like that. I don't know. Maybe he'll just leave it there and be part of his part of his career as a mixed martial artist commentator or something like that. Something to always look back on. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah, I would. You know what, Mike? I don't know if you have anything else, but I think that's all the time we have for today. We're running very long today, but you know what? It's been 3 weeks, people. Sorry about the podcast being so late, but
well, here's what I'll do then. I'll just kind of just read these headlines off, and we'll discuss maybe just one of them.
Okay.
John Doomsday Howard now is with the WSOF. He signed with them. David Branch, the dual champ at 185 and 205, re-signed with the WSOF. No, this is kind of a funny thing. Kimbo Slice and Ken Shamrock failed their Bellator 149 drug test, so that's still the biggest debacle ever in mixed martial arts history. But the one thing I should say, maybe we can discuss for a second, is Glover Teixeira replaces Shogun Rua against Rashad Evans at the UFC on Fox 19 on April 16th. Jay, I know you weren't a big fan of the Shogun Rashad Evans fight. What do you think with Glover now with Evans?
On that note, good night, people. It was nice talking to you.
Not even any better, huh?
There wasn't anything worthy of talking about in any of that for me. But if you want to touch on Glover or go ahead and Shogun.
No, that's fine. That's just some of the news. The only thing I think we have left to talk about is our fighter of the week and our
fighter
for Saturday's
no,
Fight Night 84 or 85, I think.
Let's get into some picks, Mike.
We pick 'em.
All right, so let's get into some picks, Mike. This is UFC Fight Night 85, so let's get into it.
Yeah, Mark Hunt fighting on kind of his home turf. He's from New Zealand, but Australia very close. A lot of fans in Australia. Fighting Frank Mir. Both older guys, both guys kind of at the end of their career, but Mark Hunt seems to be doing a lot better. But I still may go with Frank Mir here because of his ground game. If he can withstand Mark Hunt's punches, which, we'll see if he can, I think he gets into the ground and beats him. So we live and die with Frank Mir, as we said in the past. I'm going to live with them, I think, this time.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
As much as I love Mark Hunt.
I'm going Mark Hunt. I'm just thinking Mark Hunt may KO Mir.
Yep.
I hate to say that. Mir's a great guy. I've always loved Mir, Why doesn't Mir do his analyst thing? Why isn't he behind a desk?
I don't know, because
he's so
liked
good.
Him at WEC. I liked his commentating. He was fun to listen to. So.
Yeah, he's good at it. So, but you know what? I think that's his calling now.
Yeah. Then also we've got Hector Lombard versus Neil Magny. I'm going to go Neil Magny over Hector Lombard simply because of the reach and kind of more well-rounded. But, Lombard, he's got that punching power. But, he hasn't looked really great in the UFC. Maybe because of supplements. I'll just say that. I don't know. But Neil Magny has looked great, and I'm going to go Magny.
Yeah, I'm going to go Magny there, too. I think Neil Magny is definitely going to be the winner of this fight. All right.
Decision? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, probably decision.
Yeah.
Probably. I don't see Magny knocking him out.
Yeah, me neither.
All right, Mike. Let's go ahead and get into Fighter of the Month.
Fighter of the Month.
Mike, who is your Fighter of February? Since we're late, who is your fighter?
I kind of go through all the events for the month and try and think about who I want. And I looked at, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. What a fantastic win that guy had. Really blew the doors off of the number 2 guy. Marlon Moraes, I love him as well. Just showcased the fact that, he really needs to move on or move up, or he needs to move on to better things. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, first fight at welterweight. Looked great on a short notice opponent. But I got to go Michael Bisping. Beating Anderson Silva.
Wow.
That's I got to go there.
Okay, so you went there.
I did.
I actually went with one of your other picks. I looked down the list and I said, you know what? Stephen Wonderboy Thompson was the most impressive in February. Because not only did he blow the doors off of Johnny Hendricks, but he blew the doors off that division, in my opinion. He should get past Rory McDonald. He should. But he's my fighter of the month because I just thought he looked fantastic during his fight with Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that he just looks amazing, and you talked about not just how he looked, but that he's here, and I think that there's a lot of guys at 170 that weren't quaking in their boots, Jay, but they were looking hard at this guy, like, okay, we got to now figure out this guy.
Yeah.
So,
his movement is like no other at 170.
Yeah. But I'm happy for Michael Bisping getting his named opponent, beating Anderson Silva.
Yeah, that's a big one. I can't say it's not. Yeah. But, anyway, we're going to have to wrap up the show, Mike, because, like I said, it's been a long one. So before I go, I just want to touch on the Facebook site again. Just, go into your Google or go into your Facebook, and you can type in MMA Think Tank Podcast, and it'll pop up. It'll be the first one that pops up. join our group, join the discussions. Mike's always asking for, he's polling us and asking us different questions and stuff and writing great articles. It's a fun time. So come join us over at MMA Think Tank Podcast Facebook.
Yeah, it's something we haven't talked about in a while too, Jay. Either of us is that the whole thing of the MMA Think Tank is that we all want to talk about these things. We all we love the sport, and it's all about discussions. It's all about we just lead the charge. We lead the discussion. Yeah. So please, call in, email, go to the Facebook site. Jay's at the Facebook site too, giving his thoughts on everything. So we have a pretty good time.
Even if you can't stand our thoughts and our views on mixed martial arts, okay, come and join us, okay, to say, you know what, I think you're wrong because of this. If you love mixed martial arts, come and discuss whatever you want to discuss mixed martial arts wise.
Yep.
We don't mind being wrong. We if you prove to us that we're wrong about things, and maybe we'll change, or I might change my viewpoint. Mike might change his viewpoint. Who knows? But we'd love to hear from you. So like I said, you can go to the Facebook site, you can email us, or you can call us at 925-237-1296 and leave a message, and we'll use your message here on the podcast. Anyway, that said, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, you talked about that some of my writings are going on to some sites, and GMB Sports stands for Global Broadcast Media Sports. So that's gmbsports.com, and so I do some writing there once or twice a week. But I take it a lot of it is from the Facebook page, so you can actually get a preview of what I'm probably going to be writing about on there. So so that's what's going on.
Yep. And on that note, we're going to end it here. So thanks for listening, guys. And until next time, good night.
Good night.